Starting the recording for introduction to mobile operating systems. Our main objectives is going to be able to describe at a high level of similarities and differences between the mobile operating system and other operating systems. Compare and contrast most widely mobile operating systems, that's Android, iOS, and Windows. As we all know, there is uh, competition within the three, and Windows is really, really closely behind. They have failed compared to their dominance within computers, obviously, compared to Android and iOS, who has taken the lead within all those. Obviously, our key points is consumers' desires and expectations for mobile devices have driven the evolution of the new operating systems for these systems. Mobile operating systems are designed to enable the device mobility, support smooth experience, and provide all-in-one capabilities. Mobile operating systems differ from operating systems in the following ways. You have a touch screen interface in the majority of them. Obviously, we have some laptops with touch screen, which Windows went and hung their whole neck out with Windows 8. As for any other ones, usually you're using a mouse and or keyboard within a computer. Most of these, though, we all know they have limited power supply by a rechargeable battery. They have limited RAM efficiency because obviously the RAM is not expandable. This is not like a regular computer that I can go and take apart my Android and put in more RAM or take out the existing RAM and put bigger. No, you bought it, that's what you got. Um, it supports both Wi-Fi and cellular, and the connectivity protocols are usually not obviously on Ethernet compared to most of these computers. When they're running in your facilities, they're going to be running on the cable, which is Ethernet. Ability obviously to run on limited power. I can actually put my thing on very low power mode, and dead mouse will still be able to live. And you would have to see Pablo. As for the touchscreen interface, majority of these now, as we said, if anybody remembers, what is the new screen called? What type of screen do we have now?
Capacitive.
The capacitive screens are very, very good. Thank you. They are the ones that are used to interface with these things. Obviously, there is aftermarket things, for instance, on the Windows Surface, the iPads, and Android, different types of pads. They have the Samsung one, right? And different pads out there. All of them can add a mouse or a keyboard, believe it or not. That is since the beginning because even the Palm Pilot itself had the abilities for you to dock it into a actual place, and then right there it had a keyboard to facilitate obviously typing in these little screens because these screens are horrible for typing, especially people with big fingers like us. Unless if you're a little kid, it's very easy with these little fingers, nibble fingers. I think they just made it for little kids. I don't think they ever thought about adults. So the major, as I stated a moment ago, the major two out there playing ball with this is the Android and the Apple iOS. In a far, far, far universe behind is your Windows 8 mobile. The major differences, obviously, between the operating system is that open source code is where Android has basically kept the Linux environment still alive. If you guys don't know that, Android is based off of Linux. So they have stayed completely open source. They still believe in Linux as an open source, so they have not at all closed it down. That's why I love having either an Android phone or I don't like the pads, but I'd rather have an Android phone than an actual iPhone. It's so locked down that obviously, unless if you go and jailbreak it and then void the warranty on it, that's the only way that you'll be able to do any unknown sources. As for the app stores, we all know you got your Play Store, which is a Google Play Store, your App Store for the Apple Store, and is it called Apple Store? Did I get the right name? And then you got the Windows Market or Windows Store or something like that is what they call it. The great thing about
Diego,
these
your
things,
your share screen's frozen.
I haven't gone anywhere. I haven't moved.
Oh, okay.
Traveling in the same. um, obviously, where was I? Uh, these things have a lot of great features. They have that little gyroscope inside, so easily it will screen orient on itself. They have their self-calibrating. They have GPS integrated, geo-tracking integrated, which is a horrible thing. A lot of people forget and they leave the location on. So then Google sends you a monthly report of every location that you have parked. It's great, obviously, for the women that want to check on their husband's phones or boyfriend's phones. They can easily find out where they've been every day. As for any other thing, you have your Wi-Fi calling, which obviously facilitates the process of instead of wasting your minutes, now you can actually call over the internet. You have the virtual assistants, and you have the various application uh, executables, lack of a better name, for installing. For instance, for the Android, it's the FAPK, and then you have the SDK also. You also have the capabilities of uh, the not over Wi-Fi, but over the actual phone network. You can do emergency notification and or calls with ease. Just from the actual home screen without having actually to go and log on. You can actually just hit an emergency call and it will create an emergency call. Obviously, you could have a list of people that you recall as an emergency, or you can actually call with ease 911 without having to type any codes and or uh, what you call it, the pattern, the lock pattern. Questions or doubts so far? So our market share from 2019, as you can see, Android has taken over. A problem what Apple has, obviously, there's only Apple within Apple phone. As for Android, they've pretty much just thrown themselves to anybody who wants to use it. And pretty much every market except for one phone, anybody remember who has the Windows phone? Anybody?
Sorry, say it again.
Who has the Windows phone? Who is the phone that Windows has basically the only one that is using Windows
No,
as their
Nokia.
operating.
Nokia.
That's correct. While you have Apple using their own iOS, you have Nokia using the Windows. Everybody else pretty much is using the Android. Versus obviously you still have the BlackBerry, your Sapien, and or some of these little phones that don't have anything, right? They've been pretty much still basically a phone. A lot of these are the providers for the government phones and or little phones that are still flip phones themselves. The current OS releases, many companies develop obviously mobile device operating systems specifically for theirs. That's why they love the Android because they can actually tweak it to their phone. They can actually tweak it so that they have their look and feel within it. Obviously, overall, the Android operating system is still the same, but obviously they can still tweak it. They can put their own little logos, all that stuff with ease. You have your Windows and sorry, your other phones, as I stated a moment ago, which is the BlackBerry OS, your Symbian, HP Web OS, which is the one I believe not BlackBerry, Palm Pilot used to be. They actually bought them out, Bara and Migo. Those are pretty much the only ones that are out there now. As for the Apple iOS, it's obviously founded by Apple. A pretty unique little name, right? It is closed source, so you do not have anything that you can do there. It is based off of Unix, not Linux, but it is a Unix-based operating system in itself. It's completely closed out, and the only way you can actually develop is with an SDK, a software development kit from Apple. And you have to register as an Apple developer to be able to post into their store. Without that, you're pretty much up the proverbial hill without a paddle. Next is your Google Android phones. This one is a Linux kernel. with the core obviously written in Java. Mobile OS is maintained by Open Handset Alliance, open source OS. Technicians have full access to the code. You can actually mess with it all you want and play with it and create any app you want on top of this OS without having to register with Android or put it into the Google Store. You could actually just install it and make it on your own phone. Obviously, there is a great feature here where they do everything by alphabetical order. It is some type of dessert or candy, as you can see: jelly bean, Kit Kat, lollipop, marshmallow, nougat, which is my favorite. Nobody even knew in the world what is a nougat until they actually put in the name. Anybody know what a nougat is?
Yeah,
I
I
have
like
no
taffy.
idea.
Huh?
Oh, nougat is
Sort
a
of like
topping?
taffy. Oh, like it's
It's
kind of
like a
like
taffy
taffy,
almost,
but
yeah.
not really.
Yeah. It's like
Taffy.
it's
What's
almost like a
taffy?
taffy. That's very close to the brown one. When you call it brown one, no, not marshmallow. What you call it? The
Laffy
brown one.
taffy.
Yeah, Laffy Taffy or
Oh no, you mean I
ah,
don't know.
what do you call that
You're talking
brown
about a
one?
Tootsie Roll?
No, no. Well, no, it's a light brown and it's a square. I forgot what you call that one. It's chewing.
Caramel?
Caramel. There we go.
Okay,
It took me a
right.
while. I don't know. It's in between all of those. But if you look it up, uh, it is some sort of candy dessert thing. As for Microsoft Windows OS, Microsoft obviously is a closed, just like Apple. They don't want you touching their stuff. uh, Based on the Windows NT kernel, and the developers create mobile applications and obviously upload it to the Windows Store. All of this is with them also with the Metro UI. That's why they created this to be able to use these phones. Any questions so far? So you have the BlackBerry OS, which was sued by some individual and was terminated in 2013. Research in Motion was pretty much immune to viruses. It had a very, very good security, and they had hung their hat for years within corporate America. Everyone loved the BlackBerry because of the security features and no requirement of having to install any aftermarket applications to be able to get into your company's um, network. With ease, with a actually BlackBerry server, you can actually allow or disallow any device into your network without having to again install any VPNs or anything. The next one, which was terminated in 2012, was Symbian. I can never say the word right, which was Anna and Bell's creations. Next one, which I told you, which is the HP Web OS, which was formerly the Palm OS, is the one that's still around. Bada is terminated in 2014. Used to be the one that Samsung was using until they obviously hung their hats back onto Android. Migo was terminated in 2011 and has been replaced with Tizen. Tizen is the Linux Foundation partners created by Linux-based OS targeting mobiles embedded platforms. You may see those the majority within the smart TVs. If you didn't or weren't aware of it, that is the leader of the smart TVs, and he has basically grabbed a hold of these things because nobody else bothered to. Same thing with your in-car entertainment. That operating system in there, as you can see, the majority of the cars, no matter which car you go to, has pretty much the same look and feel. They do obviously have their own little name. If it's a Hyundai, if it's a Lexus, whatever, it has its logo in the beginning, but it is Tizen or Tizen, whatever you want to, how to say it, the one that's controlling these things. In reference to the iOSs and or things, as I stated before, Lumia is the only one basically running the Windows. As for iOS, is either on the iPhone and or the iPad itself. Android has the market share, including your Amazon Fire TV is running on the Android. That's another reason why they have crippled everybody else. They have made their bed with Amazon. So therefore, Amazon and them, obviously, they're not partners, but they are in hold with each other. So not going anywhere anytime soon. Any questions, doubts? Main things that we need to see within this is that obviously one is open source code versus the rest of them is pretty much closed source or vendor specific. Your Apple, or sorry, application source, you have your Google Play Store, your App Store, and the market, depending on which one we're talking about from Google, iOS, Apples, and Windows. You have the features of the screen orientation that I mentioned a minute ago. You have your screen calibration, which is automatically from most of these out here, positioning and geolocation, geo-tracking, Wi-Fi calling, and or any of these features that you say. Even the mobile payment service within them, you're allowed to even nowadays come in with the NFC and pay. I wouldn't ever do that in my life. I don't believe in that, but that is up to you. Any questions or doubts on these 12? Continue on here. As for closed source, as we know, is also known as proprietary software or vendor specific. Software is obviously licensed to other for use, but is kept with the control of the original one as your iOS and Windows Phone OS. Your open source is different, which is your Google Android license to developer community to further develop it and share, and obviously sometimes marketed. This is one of the reasons why everybody's pretty much loving Google, as they have stayed. Applications or apps for short for mobile devices are where all the exciting functions within the actual phone come in. Without that, we're pretty much useless as something on a bowl. But applications in Android is the Google Play Store. As I stated, you can go to many third-party sites. It's the only one that allows you to install unknown sources. Doesn't limit you only to their location. With ease, you can go anywhere and install an APK file. As for Apple, they completely control that, only allow the sale of apps within there. Obviously, there is a workaround with jailbreaking, but by the book, you can only go through the App Store. As for going through jailbreaking, you can get a virus and or some catastrophic thing happening to your Apple phone. So that's why as soon as you jailbreak it, or any iOS, I'm sorry, any Apple product, if you jailbreak it, you have pretty much became the owner and they will not support you. Windows Phones apps can be downloaded only through the Windows Store. You should not be able to install anything unless if it's from the Windows Store. Any questions or doubts? As for your screen orientations, as I stated before, most of these have this internal accelerometer. It is to measure the change of velocity and direction to help, obviously, the guy that's going to be looking at you in reference to the motion. So if I'm going like this, moving around, it is in reference to the actual gyroscope. It has a sensor to detect the rotations of axis in the roll, the pitch, and the yaw, like if you're actually doing a helicopter and or plane kind of thing. It is able to any which way you flip the phone with ease automatically. That's obviously you need to make sure that it's unlocked because some people lock their screen orientation and don't allow it to move. Any questions? As for screen calibration, I can never pronounce that word very good. Old devices, as we said, had the resistive touch screens, which required you to actually go and hit the little buttons. As for capacitive touch screens, they do not require this. It has its own ongoing calibration. As for calibration errors, is when an item is touching the screen and nothing happens. Usually, one workaround is just to turn off and turn back on the device, and it will start working again. Is one of the ways to do. And most of them have their own built-in tool to be able to assist you in obviously calibrating if necessary. If they don't, just turning it off and turning it back on most likely will fix the issue. Any questions or doubts? Calibration.
Quick question. So the only time you will calibrate a capacitive is just for troubleshooting. If none of the other sets work, right?
I don't believe you'll have many of these phones now with the feature of calibration. If you find it, please let me know. The majority of them are automatic and it's hidden in your phone. You can't go into settings and the majority of them, especially the iOS ones. You just restart it and usually they start responding on their own.
Got it. So it's automated.
Yes, it's built in. Mhm. Geolocations, that provides the relative and absolute position of a device. As we know, GPS uses an actual positioning off of the satellites. The two technologies on smartphones is the magnetometer and the GPS. The magnetometer obviously senses the magnetic fields and it lets you, the device know your heading. So if you're going north or south, it is able to tell just like on a regular compass because it uses the magnetic north to be able to. The only thing I would love to see is one of these phones in about, I forgot if it's every 1 million years or when, but I don't know if you guys know, the Earth polarity actually inverts itself. So I would love to see one of these phones getting lost in the future. As for global positioning system, it detects based on the three satellites as we know. If you don't have a satellite available, the cellular or Wi-Fi can be used to give slightly less accurate positioning. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to then bounce off the sounds and or look at the location that that Wi-Fi is. So it looks at the Wi-Fi antenna that you're at, and usually based off of that position of where the hard line is where it will then put your position. Questions or doubts? Aren't you glad? No? Okay. He turned into an apple. Never mind. Or is that a tomato? Geotracking. Both the iOS and Android devices record the locations, as I said, of the device, periodically sends it to a central location. This is the worst thing. Not that I'm going to go and steal anything. It's not like if I'm going to go do a bank heist. I just don't like people knowing where I am. It just doesn't tickle me right. It really bothers me that these phones have been authorized to track everywhere you're going. The same thing with the geo tagging. That's the most dumbest thing I ever seen where people start tagging the pictures of where they are and then they automatically go and post it right away onto the internet. I usually ask people on Facebook just to let me know where up to when are they going to be on vacation so I can pass by their house. They don't think that joke is funny, but I do. Never tell anybody where you are while you're on vacation. Always post afterwards when you come back. Don't post it while you're there. As for Wi-Fi calling, as I stated, it is similar to voice over IP, but it is wireless. It's not on the actual Ethernet. This feature obviously allows you to use a wireless connection to be able to easily make calls over the internet. It does not require you to use your minutes, which was a great feature when nobody had unlimited minutes. You could actually use the Wi-Fi to create your calls. Nowadays, majority of people do have unlimited. But as for the companies, a lot of the companies have a very, very low per minute charge. For instance, within some of these companies, they may even pay up to 2 cents per minute, which obviously is much cheaper, or I'm sorry, 0.02 cents. Does that make sense? It's like a hundredth of a cent or 20 two hundredths of a cent, some ridiculous amounts, depending obviously on their buying power. Some of them have to pay much more, so you need to keep track of that and make sure you educate the users in reference to the Wi-Fi calling whenever necessary, whenever possible for them to make those calls, especially when they're making calls internationally. You'll be surprised how many of these people start making calls while they're traveling. Obviously, they do have these features, but we need to educate them that it is better when they're out and about in these countries to make a Wi-Fi call. That way, they're not getting charged for international roaming. As for your virtual assistant, we have your Siri, you have your Android, which I don't know what is it, Google? Is it okay Google? Didn't even come up with a name with her, huh? Just call her okay Google. As for Windows Phone, you have Cortana, and I'm pretty sure Master Chief is missing her. It is provided within the Windows Phone and also within your Windows operating systems. As for your development kits, your SDKs or your APKs is your software development kits, or your ADK, your application development kit, are the set of tools that for Apple or Android OS. As for the Windows mobile phone, can have app developed in the Windows 8.1 in Visual Studio. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of it, but Visual Studio is the one that's being used within Windows. That way they're with ease being able to upload it into the Windows Store. So if you know how to code within Visual Studio with ease, you'll be able to create a Windows phone app. As for applications for Android, can be created on any Windows, Mac, Linux, doesn't care, by using the Android software developer kits, which is Android Studio. Once the app is created, they are distributed by an Android application package, APK. I don't know why it's AAP, if you ask me. Maybe they got sued. As for your emergency notification, you have wireless emergency alerts that are sent out. Obviously, you have your Amber alerts. Anybody know what a silver alert is?
It's when an old
Is it
person is
silver?
lost.
Thank you. It usually is a silver alerts are when you'll see it here a lot in Florida. A lot of people up north are not aware of that, but in Florida is well used. As for the people that have been lost, usually are the people that have Alzheimer's. Did I pronounce that right? I think so. When they get lost, you'll see a silver alert coming out asking you to look for. As for amber alerts, those are everybody are used to. You have your extreme warnings, which I'm pretty sure everybody received yesterday during our flash floods, and you have your presidential alerts, as we saw finally. I think it was last year or this year, we actually saw a test of the presidential alert in the national emergency centers. For your mobile payment service, I would never use this in my life, but phones can be used to wirelessly pay for stuff. You have the Square, which is one of the most famous ones and the most dangerous ones. As for when you give your credit card, the actual server could have that on their phone and they can actually scan and take your information. On top of that, there is a bunch of little readers that fit in your hands, but those are the dangerous ones. Those actually store many information. As for your Google Pay for Android, usually the NFC or the Apple Pay and Samsung Pay all use NFC to be able to uh, pay with ease for the user. I don't know about you, I still don't trust it. Any questions or doubts? Did I say I don't trust this? Just
Don't worry, I agree with you too. Even though it's so convenient.
that's the problem with it. It's so convenient. And if somebody gets a hold of your phone and they're anything like me, I will get inside your phone and I will be able to get wherever I want. So I'm not going to tell you how I do that, but it is possible, obviously. Any questions or doubts? Does anybody know that as long as you have any device in your hands, you have full control? Are you aware of that?
Yes.
So, so just fair warning. The moment it is much harder for me to hack you wirelessly than it is if I physically have your unit, your device. If it's a phone, if it's a computer, if I have it in my hands, that's it. That's all I need to do. I need to be able to just touch it and it's mine. So fair warning, don't use NFC unless if you want to give away free money. You could just post your credit card online and it'll be easier. Any questions or doubts?